Alright, so welcome back to the RAM Revival. We got some issues going on. We're needing to mock everything up, the fuel rails, the throttle body, adapter, everything like that. I thought I had all of the fittings. This goes back a very, very long time. I was debating the color schemes, the colors, everything we wanted to use. These two in the front, they're sort of our specialty ones that are going to allow us to use the factory fuel line. That's where that back fuel rail, if I tilt you up, you can kind of see right there the shiny spot with the fittings I've mocked up. That's what that would be. That's different than the passenger side rail. We've got stainless brackets and little panhead screws from HiPoTek, which was real nice to include. Should keep us from having to use any of the weird wonky stuff you have to use to adapt the factory fuel rails to the Hughes air gap. But what I'm thinking I'm going to need to do is actually go ahead and get this in place, not tightened and not torqued, just sitting there to make sure that everything clears. I want to know that ahead of time. And then the other thing we're faced with, I'm sort of thinking it's going to be best to throw the injectors in the rails, but again, I kind of need to have them all mocked up. What I'm currently debating, seemingly trivial things that I actually care about because it's my vehicle and I'm weird like that. This is a cap for the fuel rail. It is from Frigola. It is a slightly different finish and a slightly different color than this cap, which is from Summit Racing. It almost seems a little bit bigger. Then we also have the option of running these caps, which are just, you know, the typical AN shiny finish. So just to give you an idea, so you can kind of be here in the drama with me, this is Summit's, you know, just bright, shiny, whatever you want to call it. This is Summit's blue, and then this is Frigola's blue. Now the Frigola has a smaller profile, whereas this, there's certain angles where it almost looks like it exceeds the rail. This would sort of blend in a little bit better. These are all, everything on this rail, every single inlet, outlet, whether you're capping, running a fitting, running any specialty stuff, it's all O-ring based, and that's where we've got issues. I've got O-rings here, I've got a couple O-ring fittings, but for the 90s, where I plan to use these hot rod ones with the black, we've actually going to have to get just like a dash 6 O-ring to dash 6 and run that, I guess. So given that these are black, which I wasn't 100% sure I would run these, but I was thinking I would, to use the PTFE hose with the blue tracer, we also have the opportunity to consider running black caps. So it's all sort of trivial, mundane stuff to most people, but I'm very particular with this stuff. So I'm gonna, needless to say, just get this throttle body in place to kind of be able to clearance everything, make sure we line up. What we will need to do, if I'm not mistaken, is come with the stainless brackets, and I want to say that this bolt and this bolt, your two center bolts on your intake manifold, I want to say we're going to have to pull those and run this, and then obviously with the fuel rails you want two things to happen. I will attempt to reach over here. This would be the passenger side. We don't have any provision down here for a specialty port to connect to the factory fuel line. The other thing is we want it oriented in this manner for one big reason, and that's because this side has the screws, which would have the bracket. If we have it facing in, it's going to look way better. So again, right there you sort of see that contrast in the anodized blue versus this blue. If these fuel rails were just anodized in the same blue, it would be way easier, but they're not. They're sort of like, don't get me wrong, they look good. Whoa, every time this rotates just a tad, that freaks me out. So you can sort of see like the blue masking tape, right? You know, like that plug, sort of more dark along those lines, and then you've got the lighter fuel rail, so it looks good. I'm not going to have an issue there, but it's creating issues for people like myself who try to make everything look pristine. Now black, I don't know what that would look like coming out of there, but that's sort of the stuff I'm going to be figuring out. That's why I want to get this mocked up. Keep in mind, if you're thinking like, whoa, 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 fuel injectors are about that tall, you got interference with your linkage, buddy. Not necessarily, because this throttle body is sitting on a pretty dadgum tall adapter, as you can see there. So but I do want to check. I agree with you, we do need to definitely reference that. So I got pretty much everything except for the back just adapters mainly in part because they're O-ring. And again, I think when I stopped ordering the fittings, I was like, ah, that's so far out in the future, we're just throwing money away. Maybe I'll have the colors picked out by then, and I don't. But we're gonna get those on order. Hopefully they'll be here soon, because that'll create a standstill. But we can at least clearance and check everything. Oh, parts are missing. And, what that translates to is right here. So one thing leads to another. I was sitting here, I was figuring out how it would all line up, mock up, so on and so forth. Started throwing injectors in, and basically what I decided is I should go ahead, even though I'm not going to have the fittings I need back here in order to make the crossover line. My thoughts were, go ahead, get this in place, because in order to make the best crossover line hose, when we build that, I need it to roughly be right where it's going to be, not just rough measurements. So this will be the actual position. I've done the passenger side. What I would recommend, what I did this time, let's start with that. First thing first, I loosely secured the stainless brackets with the little 3/32 panhead screws. Had one injector in, that was kind of stupid, but you know, it's just me seeing how everything popped in. Didn't use oil on that one, because again, I didn't know what I was doing in terms of like a finality here. And as fate would have it, I thought, you know, that might hit. And sure enough, that's terrible angle for you. But proof is in the pudding, zero interference there, which is great news. Looks pretty dadgum good in my opinion. Again, a little contrast in the blues here. You got the stainless bracket, black, you know, it's just lots of colors, but hey, it is what it is. Realistically, now that I see this, I'm kind of thinking black might have been a better choice for the fuel rails. I just wanted that pop of color, you know, and then I will have blue plug wires and filter element and all that stuff. So in the long, broad scope of things, it should turn out just fine. And the beauty of this is, if I ever hate it, I can pull it apart and just paint it. So or pull them for another motor and get black in, but for all intents and purposes, this is fine. And what I would recommend you do, though, this is torqued back and everything. I would come in, I would get your fuel injectors in, I would oil the bore and the O-ring. I would place all 4 of the injectors. Again, think of your wiring. You need this facing out. I think the factory kind of had them angled in a little bit, but just don't have the outside, you know, the plug facing in. Unless you're doing trick wiring and you've checked your clearances with your intake runners and everything, then proceed on. But for everyone else, you want these facing out. I would put the injectors in. I would go ahead, I would remove your 2 intake bolts. Again, we'll torque those to 12 foot-pounds if I'm not mistaken. So 144 inch-pounds, that's what I just used because it's what I had out. It did actually clear coming in with a straight extension. I did not think it would. I thought we'd created a problem. But this right here is what I used. So the Capri, you know, diamond torque wrench, a long Wera extension, quarter drive socket, and somehow everything lined up enough to get the torque that we needed. So that was golden. You could then finish this off. It's much easier if you remove the throttle body. Again, that's why I loosely installed it, put everything tight into space there. But then I would come in, press down on top of the fuel rails, I think would be the way to handle this. So what I'm going to do over here, luckily it didn't turn over an open thing of oil. We'll pull these plugs, I'll oil the bores, I will shoot the injectors down after oiling the O-rings. Then I'm going to come in and we will simply loosely install that. We will pull these 2 bolts, we'll get everything lined up. We'll have this side buttoned up as well. Brought you over here to film the process on the driver's side, and lo and behold, the tripod's not tall enough. So what I have here is that 8816 long 12-inch SK extension and just a Wera 1/2-inch drive socket. What are we doing with these? Well, if I hold you up here, I'm going to break these 2 bolts free. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll be back for the next step. Alright, so not the ideal angle for you, but better than nothing. And what I'm going to do is get my pinky submerged in a little bit of oil here. I'm thinking assembly lube would be okay too, but I went by the manual and it said use a little bit of motor oil. So, you know, bear in mind if you're going to fire this thing up immediately, you know, you might have a little bit of oil in your fuel, but main thing there, just get it in the landings, not necessarily on the top side. You're not concerned with that. You're just interested in the landing. Now, I'm going to come in To save time here and less struggle, I have removed the plastic caps from the bottom, and we're just going to oil the O-ring, again inspect the O-ring as well. But we will come in, keeping the plastic cap, which you can kind of see it there in the corner. Keeping the plastic cap on gives me something to press with. It's just a snap fit. We're going to come in and replicate that 3 more times. So again, luckily I got a lot of oil on my finger here. We're going to put a lot of oil on that O-ring. Realistically with these, I feel like if you had good oil on the manifold, I don't think you'd have to go to that length, but it is good practice anyway. So like I said, I don't do a ton with injectors, so I don't know, like if grease would be preferred, but again, the manual said do it this way, so that's what we're gonna do. Didn't talk about working around a tripod, so we'll seat this guy a little square. Again, this is much easier when you don't have a camera here between you and your work area, but hey, it's what we're making happen here. So again, go ahead and oil this guy down and drop it into place, hopefully without knocking the camera over. The one knock on this engine stand, like it's locked into place, but it'll rotate just a little bit side to side, and it freaks you out. Especially, the first couple of times it happens. So nonetheless, we have these installed. We have the, can't really see that far because again, tripod's just too short, but it took the center 2 intake manifold bolts out. So what I will probably do now, just because of what happened last time, I'm going to go ahead and once more remove the throttle body, which is super easy because again, we just mocked it up so nothing's tight. I will then come in, I will loosely assemble the stainless brackets to the back of the fuel rail, not final tight, just loosely assembled. I'm going to get the brackets squared up, then we will oil these O-rings. I will also oil the fuel rail, same way, just pinky into the orifice. And that should make things slide and glide pretty easy. And at that point in time, we'll have this side buttoned up as well. Alright, so for my convenience and your viewing pleasure, we're back over here at a lower work surface. And what I want to highlight again, this is the driver's side. That is critical to note because it's got a special feature. It not only has the ports here, but it also has this. This is a special port that will again allow us to utilize a fitting and connect to the factory quick connect. So that's what we're going to utilize. And what I want to do is come in, again, think about this, everything's kind of flipped, but this will be the side, we'll kind of flip around, right? But we want the brackets facing down. What I mean by that, where this is roughly a 90-degree bend, we don't want it installed up this way, we want it down this direction. Again, reaching around the camera, not fun. Kind of wish I had the holding function on these, my little Torx ones do. But this is way easier, again, without straddling a tripod, I assure you, but we will make do. And again, you'll note there's some play here. That's why we don't final tighten those. You're going to get it a lot tighter than that, but you don't have to torque it down and have it out of position. You want to let the intake manifold and your injectors sort of dictate the installed height. So again, awkwardly reaching around a tripod. Now we're going to come in. The biggest selling point of the Wiha Hex Keys, if you're wondering about these sleeves, is in fact that this is cylindrical. It's super easy on your fingers and hands. Whereas a traditional hex key, it is rough. You've got 6 sides because it's a hex key, right? And this sort of just insulates that. It lets you get a little bit of speed if you want to, and it's also just way more comfortable. But I will say 3/16 is one of those sizes. It's not super objectionable to begin with. Nonetheless, that's about how I want them. Again, they can catch and be tight, but we also still have the adjustment. So what I'm going to do, step back over to the motor, pull the caps off the top of our fuel injectors. That's the clear ones, get the oil run. I'll also come in and get oil here, and we should be able to press fit all of our injectors and have this side mocked up. Alright, so again, not the greatest angle, but I have to work with what I've got. So I've got the injectors in, I've removed the throttle body, obviously, because we've got the fuel rail there. Brackets loosely installed. I have oiled the O-rings, I have oiled the ports on the fuel rails. Also note, this guy right here, again, a critical thing to note, you want that on the driver's side so you can connect to the factory quick connect. Now, This is what I think would be the best way to make this happen. We just want to come in and press down on these, get them to tuck in. You're going to have a nice press fit just like that. They went on in pairs, and I was able to do this with the camera in front of me. So it's a little awkward, but functional. And then by leaving these brackets loosely attached, we are then able to take our two hidden bolts, which you can't see, and get them to drop down, catch threads very easily. I'll tighten those up again, 12 foot-pounds. We'll want to hit all of the intake manifold bolts again just to be safe, you know, because overkill and whatnot. But right here, we've got everything set up. I'm going to get this torqued down. I will also then come in right back here where my two index fingers are and tighten our tiny little 3/16 screws. So that's what it's sort of looking like from a different angle for you. Again, it's just a little funky of a color. We'll have a good comparison here in a second, but let me get everything tightened and torqued. Battery light's flashing, but I do want to highlight this again. It does not seem like this would clear at all, but I assure you I'm doing nothing special, and we've got that down. Since the light's flashing, I'm just going to torque these again, 144 inch-pounds, 12 foot-pounds, and call it good. Alright, again with the battery light flashing, I got to go fast. One little note, you'll note we had the Wiha Hex Key come out. That's the textured one. The reason being, this side right here, it lined up exactly with the jut out on the intake manifold, and the Wiha just fractions smaller, and got me the clearance that I needed. I thought I was going to have to modify one. The good news with a hex key, you cut it, and it's still a hex key. But would hate to have done that. That said, here we are. We've got the driver's side here, obviously our fitting here. I've gone ahead, I've capped both just to keep dirt out. Coming around, I've dropped the throttle body back on. Here we are on the passenger side, got those fuel rails in. Basically what we need to do now is get a couple of fittings so we can make our crossover in the back. Also have to pick it out. This is Summit's anodized cap. This is the Frigola one. These are all O-ring fittings again. I just don't have the O-ring installed in that one. It doesn't make a difference. And then right there, that's the Summit kind of shiny one. But I want you to pay attention here. You've got the dark blue injector. You've got this anodized color. And then Summit or Frigola, it's just that darker blue. It's what you typically think of when you have an anodized blue fitting. When I bring you up here for the aerial view, even the Hughes Big Gulp, it's like that dark blue that you always get with anodized stuff. Not the case here. So these aren't terrible by any stretch of the imagination. It's just it's not the typical anodized blue. A lot of times between brands, especially like cheap ones and American made, you will see color variation. Sometimes even the same brand that you bought for years, you've got like one fitting and you need another one. Subtle color variations. If you care about that stuff, keep it in mind. Best to get all the fittings at the same time, same source. But I think that's it, because again, the battery is going to die. So got the fuel rails in. We'll do the crossover, I guess, in the next one, or a continuation of this one. If I end this one, LoneStarMopars.com is the website. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all three at Lone Star Mopars. 408 is coming together with our air and fuel stuff. Also, don't know if I showcased this. This was a pain to put in, the actual dip stick. The tube was also difficult, but the stick was insane. There it is. It doesn't have the black on engine oil. If we want to do that, we can probably Sharpie it on or something. Sometimes it's nice to not have it, because that just tends to collect grease and look bad. But again, I gotta say, it's coming together pretty nicely. So but yeah, it is coming together. Apologies if you hear barking dogs. I've got my screen door open to let fresh air in while I was charging batteries and stuff. I love that thing. Speaking of, it's getting late. It's 8:07. I haven't eaten anything. I haven't been in the house in like 5 hours, so I should probably do that. But yeah, that's where we leave it off. I'll just be picking some colors, building our crossover hose here for our fuel rails, and getting all our connections lined up. So it's looking good. I hope you're enjoying the Ram revival still. Again, subscribe if you have not. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts, particularly if you've been here, if you got the HiPoTek rails. What color did you go with and why? How have they held up? If you got the blue rails, did you notice that they're like a quite, I can't even say subtle, it's a pretty different shade. But again, you're going to have that. It kind of depends who anodized it and all that stuff. I'm sure relative humidity conditions, all that, who knows, could play in. But I'm going to quit rambling before the battery's totally gone, get some pictures of this sweet looking thing, and I'll catch you back here for the next thrilling installment of the Ram Revival.